There you go.
Hit. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our study of the book of John. We're in John chapter 7 tonight, but as is our tradition, we will begin with the review. Boy, we had these last two sessions were really kind of tough to go through. All right, when we were finishing up the book of the chapter of chapter 6. All right, it was really kind of hard. Even Jesus himself said that these were hard sayings, the things that he was teaching in these times. And so the Bible tells us that. The big thing to remember, all right, over the last couple of weeks that he talked about were really two things that you really need to remember. Remember, he's actually talking about something that we know today as the Eucharist or communion. What was so hard about what he was saying to people?
They couldn't believe they could eat his flesh.
That's it. What is this all about? What is it, cannibalism? You know, I mean, come on. What is this all about? Yeah. And this idea of you must eat my flesh and drink my blood. And of course, what he's talking about is you need to accept Jesus Christ and his blood sacrifice for the remission of sins. That is what he's saying. But remember, he's speaking in tons of symbolism as he's going through all this. All this idea about being the bread of life, living water, all that kind of stuff. He's been talking in symbolism. So it would have meaning all across the world. Because everybody in the world eats bread. Everybody in the world drinks water. These are things that he comes to. Many people drink wine. So these are things that he has done in order to be able to teach us and to teach us for all time. The other thing that's important to remember is how many of his disciples responded. Do you remember?
They didn't believe.
12 of them.
Remember, he has many more disciples. He's had as many as 72. But remember, not just the 12, but others, how did they respond? They left him. They deserted him because these teachings were so hard. It was hard for them to accept. And so these are some of the things to just take in consideration. That more people rejected Jesus Christ than accepted him. More people rejected Jesus Christ than accepted him. All right, that brings us down to what, when he's talking to the 12. Remember, I said this is some of the most beautiful words that have ever been written. If you want to go down, this is in John chapter 6, and if you want to let's look at verse 66. So John chapter 6, beginning in verse 66. So this is right before chapter 7. From this time, many of his disciples turned back and no longer followed him. Verse 67, Jesus says, "You do not want to leave too, do you?" Jesus asked the 12. Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We believe and know that you are the Holy One of God." Peter, in his boldness, speaks the truth. And Jesus replied, I have not chosen you, the 12, yet one of you is a devil. Have I not chosen you, the 12? Yet one of you is a devil. Of course, he's talking about Judas Iscariot. All right, so that brings us up to tonight. Tonight's going to be a whole lot more fun. Jesus will continue to talk and do things that we would probably consider strange, but we get to have a little bit of fun as to some of the things that are going on tonight. All right, first of all, let me ask you a question. How do you feel about people giving you advice?
Sometimes I don't mind, but sometimes I resent it.
Right. Why do you resent it at times?
Because, I don't know, I think it's because I already kind of know what I should do or what I shouldn't do, and I don't have to be told or reminded.
Right. It can be irritating.
Yeah.
Yeah?
My sister has a tendency to do that.
Yeah, see, I knew we were going to get to a source. See, a lot of times it's the source of the people giving you advice.
No, she treats me like I'm an invalid.
Right. Other comments about getting advice? Because it's important to get advice, right? The Bible talks about how important it is. There's safety in a group of counselors, but it depends on who the counselor is.
Well, that's like my sister gives me advice, but if I try to tell her, she shuts me right off.
Right.
Oh, Priscilla's like that.
By the way, are these older or younger sisters?
Older.
Older.
Okay, so that's just natural. That just comes with the territory, all right? That just comes with the territory, all right? We've got famous sayings. I'd like to give you a nickel's worth of free advice. Right?
Take what you want and leave the rest.
That's right, take what you want. That's right. That's right. Let me just put it out for you. You decide what you want to do. And so a lot of times, it's not only the advice, it's who's giving it to us. There are people in life that you want advice from. There are experts and things like that. And a lot of times we'll ask for advice. So sometimes being given advice when you don't ask for it is also irritating.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But so in this chapter, we're going to read how Jesus responded to that. Again, from family. Okay, from family. All right. Another thing is, we've shared with you before, how Jewish people have come up with sayings to let you know, really, in a very short way, how history has gone. And I'll give you one right now. So Henry will tell us about the history of the Jews. Right, this is the rabbi we used to attend his congregation up in Stoughton. They tried to kill us. God saved us. Let's eat. That's the history of the Jews. They tried to kill us. God saved us. Let's eat. The Jews have these things called feasts. Okay, we do one of them each year. Lord willing, we'll do it again in April. It's the Passover feast. All right, we're in the middle of one of those feasts right now. It's called the Feast of Dedication, also known as Hanukkah. This is a feast week. All right. In this chapter, Jesus is going to be attending one of those feasts. It's also the feast, I think, that was actually where his birthday is. Okay? And so we'll have some fun with that as well. Jesus is going to do something weird, but I'll explain why. And it'll make more sense after I explain it, because when you read it, it's kind of weird. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and read. We're going to read the first portion of chapter 7. See how far we get tonight, because there's a lot to cover in this. We get to talk about all those different topics. So you ready? We're in John chapter 7. I'll begin reading in verse 1. After this, Jesus went around in Galilee, purposely staying away from Judea, because the Jews there were waiting to take his life. But when the Jewish feast of tabernacles was near, Jesus' brothers said to him, "You ought to leave here and go to Judea, so that your disciples may see the miracles you do. No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. Since you are doing these things, show yourself to the world." For even his own brothers did not believe in him. Verse 6. Therefore, Jesus told them, "The right time for me has not yet come. For you, any time is right. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me, because I testify that what that is evil. You go to the feast. I am not yet going up to this feast, because for me the right time is not yet come." Having said this, he stayed in Galilee. Verse 10. However, after his brothers had left for the feast, he went also, not publicly, but in secret. Now at the feast the Jews were watching for Jesus and asking, "Where is that man?" Among the crowds there was widespread whispering about him. Some said, "He is a good man." Others replied, "No, he deceives the people." But no one would say anything publicly about him for the fear of the Jews. So let's stop there for a second. And let's go back to verse 1. If you remember, when Jesus was doing this whole thing about talking about the eating of his flesh and the drinking of his blood, he was in his hometown of Galilee. Galilee is not where he was born. He was raised in Galilee. Where was he born?
Bethlehem.
Oh, little star,
Bethlehem.
oh, Bethlehem, how still we see thee lie. I'll stop singing. After this, Jesus went around in Galilee, purposely staying away from Judea. That's where all the big shot Jews were. That's where all the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the scribes, the high priests, all the bosses were there in Judea, specifically in Jerusalem. He's avoiding that place. Because they were waiting to take his life. Remember what I said? They tried to kill us. God saved us. Let's eat. Terry, you got to say that part. It's an important part. All right.
Yeah, they're celebrating life. They
L'chaim.
got saved.
Yeah.
L'chaim. All right. Verse 2. But when the Jewish Feast of Tabernacles was near, then we'll stop there and I'll explain that. The next thing, Jesus' brothers are going to talk to him. Feast of Tabernacles. See, I told you? That's the eat part. Okay. The Feast of Tabernacles is an annual Jewish celebration of two things. You want to take a crack at one of them, Gail? Tabernacles, Sukkot.
Purim.
Nope, that'd be Purim, that'd be Esther. Okay, she doesn't remember. It's okay. She'll remember in a second when I say it.
Well, my notes said Israel's wilderness experience.
Exactly. So that's Sukkot. That's the gathering, all right? The reason why they're called tabernacles is that's when we tabernacled with God in the desert. Remember the whole thing about being in the desert for 40 years? All right? Being in the desert for 40 years, people were wandering, the Jews were wandering around, right? Moses was leading them, stuff like that. Because of their sin, they couldn't get into the promised land right away. So they had to wander around. To remember that time and how God was with them, remember, God was visibly with them. They saw a pillar of fire at night, and they saw a series of clouds during the day that they followed. So the Jews, to remember this each year, practice something that we call Emmanuel. What is Emmanuel?
God with us.
God with us. God with us. They practice. And so what Jews do every year, they go out, they build this little hut in their backyard. It's called a sukkah. Okay? And then they will stay inside and have a meal as a way to remember what it was like to be in the wilderness, wandering around, but God with them, wandering in the wilderness as well. So let me stop here and say, if you remember the story of Jesus' birth, everybody had to go back to their hometowns because they were doing the census. And so Joseph and Mary went back to Joseph's hometown, which is Bethlehem. But there were no rooms left in any of the buildings. But if it was during the time of Sukkot, guess what's in the backyards? All these little huts all over the place that people normally live in. Now that sounds like a nice place for a nice Jewish girl to have her baby. Okay. So a lot of Messianic Jews believe that it's during the time of Sukkot that Jesus is born because it represents Emmanuel, God with us. Kind of neat, huh? All right. The other thing, it's also the harvest season. So they also celebrate the harvest. And so that, again, it's the fall when that can happen. All right? Cool? All right, good. Moving on. So verse 2. But when the Jewish Feast of Tabernacles was near, Jesus' brothers said to him, "You ought to leave here and go to Judea, so that your disciples may see the miracles you do. No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. Since you are doing these things, show yourself to the world." That would be a nickel's worth of free advice. Any problems?
Well, he didn't want to be seen.
Not yet. What were we going to say, Gail?
It wasn't his time.
It was, thank you, Joseph. Gail got it. It's not his time. There's a lot of timing that has to go along with this. But even within this, and you'll see in a few moments, he's not saying that it's not his time to become public, because he is public. It's not the time for him to be at the feast, because he's going to it. It just wasn't the way the brothers. Why are the brothers advising him to do this?
Because she's doing miracles.
He's doing miracles, right? But they don't really believe that. They don't believe in him, right? But they believe of him. Right? You do know he's had run-ins. He has run-ins with his family a couple of times. All right? You can stay where you're at. I'm going to turn to another one. All right? So this is in the book of Luke. That's for you. All right? And I'll read you this. This is Luke 8, verse 19. So you don't think you need to turn there because we'll just go right on back. It's very short. Now, Jesus' mother and brothers came to see him, but they were not able to get near him because of the crowd. Someone told Jesus, your mother and brothers are standing outside wanting to see you. Verse 21, he replied, my mother and brothers are those who hear God's word and put it into practice. How's that? Where?
That was Luke, yeah.
That's Luke 8, right, in Luke 8. And here we are. Where are Jesus' brothers, sisters, and mothers? We're his family. When we hear God's word and we put it into practice. Now, mind you, I can go back to Mark. They actually think he's local. How's your Spanish? Muy local. Yeah, they think he's local. All right? Meshugana in Hebrew, okay? Because of all the things he's saying and doing. Remember, we just read about him talking about eating my flesh and drinking my blood. So I think it's okay for people to think he's a little nuts, all right? But here, he's actually paying attention to his brothers. And just like the ladies were talking about their sisters, he's not too crazy to hear about this. He's not too crazy to hear about this. But he also knows their hearts. He knows our hearts. He knows whether or not we believe in him or if we're out looking for our own good. I think it's fair to say I don't think anybody here has rich family members. No. That's okay. How about famous? Anybody got any famous ones? Nobody? No. Famous ones? My last name is Conrad, okay? There were famous Conrads, but seeing that my father didn't have any brothers, we're it. Okay, so like Robert Conrad, he played in the Wild Wild West, okay, and Baba Black Sheep, very famous actor. How about this, Charles P. Conrad? Anybody know who that is? No, he walked on the moon.
I know my father was named after Dewey.
Oh, after the governor who lost to Truman?
No, Captain Dewey, the one.
Oh, the Navy captain. Yes, right. Very good. Excellent. So none of us are famous. Well, these guys are realizing their brother's becoming famous. Which means what for them?
Jealousy.
Well, no. They can ride on his coattails, and guess what? They become famous. That would just make sense. Go public, brother. Come on. Let's get it out there. You're doing great. Look at all those wonderful things you're doing. Look at all the crowds that are coming out to see you. Hey, we can hang out with this guy. Life is good. Hey, we got the same last name and everything. So, sounds good. Their last name would be Ben Yosef. Just to let you know. Yeshua Ben Yosef. All right? Now, you're not buying this?
No,
Oh, okay. You're not. Okay.
sounds selfish to me.
Whoa. Are you saying because it sounds selfish, you can't buy it?
No, I didn't say you can't buy it.
I thought you did. Okay. What do you mean then?
I mean, they're thinking of themselves,
I think they are thinking of themselves.
not worried about others.
They're not thinking that Jesus is the Messiah, all right? And they're not realizing that he's the Son of God. They're not buying that. So they give him this nickel's worth of free advice. They should have kept it. Okay? So Jesus responds, right? In verse 6, therefore, Jesus told them, the right time for me has not yet come. For you, any time is right to go to the feast. You can go to the beginning, the middle, the end of it. All right, but it's not right now. But this is the heavy part. Watch verse 7. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me, because I testify that what it does is evil. So wait a minute, why can't they hate the brothers?
Because they're not saying that what they are doing is evil.
Exactly. So nobody wants to stone them, huh?
No.
No.
They're part of the evil.
They're part of the evil. Okay, so that's going to get to the next part, right? No, you already got it. The world, they're a part of the world. They're actually a part of the evil. There's the whole thing about them trying to get Jesus to go out public so that everybody could say, ooh, ah, and then they can become famous and maybe even rich. They're part of the world and represent that. Jesus is not. Look, people will hate us. just by saying that we're Christians. It happens all the time. Automatically, we get accused of all kinds of things. You know, we get accused of being judgmental. Simply because we tell people, well, no, I'm a Christian. Yeah, you guys are all so judgmental. You know, I had a discussion with somebody on Facebook. They've cut me off completely now, of course. Oh, no, you guys are all nothing but a bunch of hypocrites. I went to this church and just to get a child baptized, and they're going to charge me $200 for it. Of course, I asked them for the name of the church.
Did he tell you? No.
No. What they're doing is that, because like I said, I know tons of churches, and because this is a Fall River guy, I know tons of churches. I don't know of any that would do anything like that.
Yeah.
All right? And I said, by the way, you're pretty much leaving out all of the non-Catholic churches, because most of them don't do infant baptisms, unless you're question about a dedication. They'll do a dedication, but no, this guy was just trying to show why he wants to hold on to the world, why he wants to live his own life by his own terms. This is what Jesus is doing. Jesus is bringing a sword that will separate, and the Bible says this, mother from daughter, father from son. Verse 8, you go to the feast. I am not yet going up to this feast, because for me the right time has not yet come. Having said this, Jesus stayed in Galilee. So now his family moves on. They go up to the feast. I'm sure his disciples were already there. Many other folks had already gone. By the way, it's a party. It's a good time. It's like Passover. It's a blast. Lots of fun. Hanukkah is a fun time. The Feast of Dedication that you see in John 10 that we talked about before. These are good times. Look, there's only one holiday the Jews have that's no fun. One. Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement.
Day of Atonement.
They fast and pray for the forgiveness of their sins. Yom Kippur. That's it. Other than that, Purim, what Gail was talking about. That's the annual, everybody gets dressed up in costumes, and there's a party, and they tell the story of Esther over again. So, it's up with Mordecai, down with Haman. A lot of fun. So there's lots of parties. So this is a great time to go on up there. Everybody's going to be very festive. There's going to be a lot of neat things going on. So now let's go down to verse 10. However, after his brothers had left for the feast, he went also, not publicly, but in secret. Now, at the feast, the Jews were watching for him and asking, where is this man? Among the crowds, there was widespread whispering about him. Some said, he is a good man. Others replied, no, he deceives the people. But no one would say anything publicly about him for the fear of the Jews. So they just kept it quiet amongst themselves. No one wanted to be found to be affiliated with Jesus, even if they were critics. Okay? All right. This is the atmosphere Jesus is going to walk into. So let's start again in verse 14. Not until halfway through the feast did Jesus go up to the temple courts and begin to teach. So he's right there. He's right there in the leader's backyard. The Jews were amazed and asked, how did this man get such learning without having studied? Jesus answered, my teaching is not my own. It comes from him who sent me. If anyone chooses to do God's will, he will find out whether my teaching comes from God or whether I speak on my own. He who speaks on his own does so to gain honor for himself. But he who works for the honor of the one who sent him is a man of truth. There is nothing false about him. Has not Moses given you the law? Yet not one of you keeps the law. Why are you trying to kill me? Verse 20. You are demon-possessed, the crowd answered. Who is trying to kill you? Jesus said to them, I did one miracle, and you are all astonished. Yet because Moses gave you circumcision, though actually it did not come from Moses, but from the patriarchs, you circumcise a child on the Sabbath. Now, if a child can be circumcised on the Sabbath, so the law of Moses may not be broken, why are you angry with me for healing the whole man on the Sabbath? Stop judging by mere appearances and make a right judgment. Okay. That's as far as we're going to get tonight. So let's go back to verse 14. In verse 14, it says, not until halfway through the feast did Jesus go up to the temple courts and begin to teach. It's believed that the reason why he waited until it was halfway through, most likely that's when the largest number of people would have been in Jerusalem. You know how it is, right? You know, the early birds arrive, right? And most of the people start coming in what they think. Then you get the socially late crowd and things like that. But usually by halfway through an event, everybody's there. Okay? So that's when Jesus began teaching. The Jews were amazed and asked, how did this man get such learning without having studied? He's not dressed like the Pharisees, like the well-educated people. He's dressed like a poor man. He's a carpenter. He's not well known. He didn't go to the big schools. None of that's there. So they were really confused because he was speaking, especially about the Old Testament, so well that they were impressed. All right. But Jesus answered. Now, here's the thing that they're not ready for, because they're ready to hear him say, well, I was under somebody's tutelage back in Galilee or in Bethlehem or someplace else. They're waiting to hear that. He tells them something they're not expecting. My teaching is not my own. It comes from him who sent me. Okay, that should be confusing. All right? If anyone chooses to do God's will, he will find out whether my teaching comes from God or whether I speak of my own. That's a big deal. I know it doesn't look like a big deal, but he has just claimed that he's been taught directly by God. All right? Now, look at his humility. Verse 18. He who speaks on his own does so to gain honor for himself. But he who works, not speaks, he who works for the honor of the one who sent him is a man of truth. There is nothing false about him. Did you see the change? Going back to verse 17. If anyone chooses to do God's will, okay, he will find out whether my teaching comes from God, whether I speak of my own. Verse 18. He who speaks on his own does so to gain honor for himself. The next, though, he doesn't say he who speaks for the honor of the one who sent him. He doesn't say that. What does he say?
Are you trying to kill him?
Yeah, that's coming. All right. But in verse 18, the second part of verse 18.
Okay.
Not even the second part, right in the middle. All right. Watch the difference. In verse 18, he begins by saying, he who speaks, that's the key word, speaks, on his own, does so to gain honor for himself. Then he changes it. But he who works for the honor of the one who sent him is a man of truth. And it's not enough for us to be speaking. We need to be actively involved in the work. That's Jesus' point here. Verse 19. Now, this is going to get kind of confusing. Has not Moses given you the law, yet not one of you keeps the law? Right? It's impossible to keep the law. The law is just too difficult. All right? Then he goes, as Kay was saying, why are you trying to kill me? All right, now there's a crowd there. He's teaching an entire crowd. Not everybody in the crowd is trying to kill him. In fact, very few people in the crowd are trying to kill him. But this is a surprise. People there are stunned. What are you talking about? All right. Let's pause for a second. Let me ask you another question. When you want to insult somebody, what do you usually say to them? I know none of us ever insulted anybody. I don't want to give you that kind of thing.
When you insult somebody?
Yeah, when you insult somebody, what do you say?
Make it their fault.
Okay, be specific. Give me something like, you
You an
idiot.
idiot.
Thank you, you idiot, okay.
You're stupid.
You stupid, moron, knucklehead, okay? All right, a whole bunch of them. In biblical times, you want to insult somebody, you know what you say?
You're demon
You're
possessed.
demon possessed. All right? You're demon possessed, that's it. You're demon possessed, that's what you say. All right? Not me, I'm cool. Okay, all right. You are demon possessed. All right? All right, the crowd answered, who is trying to kill you? All right, they're surprised. 21, Jesus said to them, okay, and this is where we can tie it together. I did one miracle, that's healing a man on the Sabbath. He healed somebody on the Sabbath. Trust me, that's one of the things everybody's talking about, is that he had the audacity to heal a man on the Sabbath. Remember, you're supposed to do no work on the Sabbath, nothing. You can't even travel very far. There's all these different rules that the law prevents you from doing, okay? I did one miracle and you're all astonished. Yet because Moses gave you circumcision, all right, so he's comparing what he did with Moses and what he's doing, all right? And that's the idea of circumcision, all right? You circumcise a child on the Sabbath. Now, if a child can be circumcised on the Sabbath so that the law of Moses may not be broken, why are you angry with me for healing the whole man on the Sabbath? All right? Again, this is a very Jewish crowd he's talking to. All right? He's explaining things to them in ways that they'll understand. We're not the Jewish crowd today. It's not that easy. All he's saying is this, all right? Don't tell me, all right, that I can't heal people on the Sabbath when you, in order to fulfill Moses' law, circumcise on the Sabbath. You're doing work. I'm doing work. So stop judging me. And that's how he finishes it. 24. Stop judging by mere appearances and make a right judgment. Okay. In all fairness, they have no idea what he's talking about. We barely understand this. And we have it right in front of us. Okay? Remember, they've been murmuring about him, some saying that he's a good man, some saying not so. Okay. He's trying to straighten this all out. But it's going to get even more confusing for them as we go forward. Because it's not, again, all the way to the end, some of his own disciples didn't quite believe. And they had to figure it out at the very end. He's going to say other weird things too, right? He's going to say this. This temple I will destroy and raise up in 3 days. All right, I'll tell you this. I'm going to say something really funky. You tell me if you think I'm demon-possessed. All right? I'm going to tear this building down. In 3 days, I'm going to raise it back up. Right, exactly right. That's exactly right. Mushugana, right? Muy loco? All right? What's the Portuguese for crazy?
Did.
Did?
Did.
Did.
Dude.
All right, did. Like in dirt.
Well, you know, Joe, tell them.
Okay. All right?
You speak Portuguese, don't you, Joe?
A little bit.
All right.
I
So,
pick it
I'm
up
not
here and
even
there.
Portuguese.
You're speaking it pretty good.
The cabeça,
Yeah, yeah.
the head. That's crazy.
you're
in
crazy.
the head.
Right. So that's what Jesus is saying. All right? Of course, he's not talking about the actual temple. He's talking about himself.
About himself.
We're all the temple of the Holy Spirit. Our bodies become that. All right? They have no idea. What the heck is this guy talking about? All right? And it doesn't, for a lot of them, it doesn't click until the resurrection. I'm with them. This would not mean, I would not be able to understand this at all. But now it's something that we understand and will understand for millennia, not decades or hundreds of years, for thousands of years. We can understand this now. All right. A little easier teaching this tonight than it was last week. All right. Jesus is a little bit more clear as to what he's talking about. What are your questions and comments? Just think about it. His own brothers didn't believe in him. His mother does, right?
Yeah, Mother heard the angel.
Well, remember, she heard the angel,
So
right?
she would know what's
She
going
raised
on.
him, saw him going on, right? She was at the wedding in Cana.
Yeah.
Okay, she saw that. Remember, that's when she says, do what my son tells you to do. Okay?
She knew who he was.
She knew who he
He was
was.
the son of
She
God.
knew what he was.
She knew what he was. She treasured these things in her heart.
Yep.
Yeah. So she had this
She
advantage.
wouldn't have known all the things he was going to do,
No, absolutely not.
but she knew that he could probably do them.
Yeah. And that's also, let's take into consideration too, that we have hindsight. We can look back.
Right.
All right? She was still surprised. There
Oh,
was
I'm sure.
tons of times where she was going, oy vey, a smear, all right? You know, and getting stunned by all this. So it's kind of neat. It's kind of neat for us to look at it again from their perspective, all right? And say, oh my goodness. Questions and comments? Look at Mike and Gail over here.
Michael's had a big day. He's probably ready for the,
It's kind of a crazy mixed up world even then, isn't it?
Yes, it was an extremely crazy mixed up world even then. Yep, and it was changing rapidly.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole idea of the Roman roads existed, all right? That's the internet of the first century. Because all of a sudden you get people appearing in Jerusalem you never thought you'd see, coming all the way from Spain, all right? Because of the Roman roads. The Romans had devised all these wonderful roads all over the Mediterranean. And so people were moving very rapidly and things along those lines. Things were changing dramatically. All right. All right. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. I'll see you next time.